Welcome to Heartfelt Revenge Stories. The champagne glasses clinked together at the Christmas party. And there they were, my parents, smiling like everything was perfectly normal. Like we hadn't all stood in this very room 3 weeks ago and promised that we weren't doing gifts this year. Mom had announced it so proudly, so loudly that even the neighbors probably heard through the walls. Let's keep things simple, she'd said. And like the good daughter I'd always tried to be, I just nodded. Because that's what I did. I nodded. I agreed. I stayed quiet. Then the front door opened, and my sister Madison walked in. Oh, she didn't just walk in. She made an entrance. Arms full of presents, boxes stacked so high I could barely see her face. Each one wrapped in that expensive paper that crinkles just right. Topped with satin bows that probably cost more than my grocery budget. One for her husband. One for her precious son. One for Mom. One for Dad. A long rectangular box that screamed, expensive electronics. Another that actually jingled when she set it on the table. The room transformed instantly. You could feel it like the air itself changed. Oh, sweetheart. Dad practically jumped out of his chair, laughing that warm laugh he saved just for her. You didn't have to do all this. Mom rushed over and hugged Madison like she just won a Nobel Prize. Ha ha ha, and there I was standing in the corner with my paper cup of fruit punch, feeling that old familiar tightness creeping into my chest. It wasn't jealousy, not really. It was something deeper, something that had been growing since childhood. Something that felt like being slowly erased. Please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. The gift giving started and oh, it was a show. Paper tearing, gasps of delight, laughter bouncing off the walls. My nephew got a brand new gaming system. Dad unwrapped a designer watch. Mom pulled out a handbag she'd been not so subtly hinting about for months, clutching it to her chest like it was a newborn baby. Then my aunt leaned over, and in that whisper that somehow felt louder than shouting, asked, Emma, honey, didn't you bring anything? Before I could even open my mouth, Madison laughed. That sweet, innocent laugh she'd perfected over 32 years. Oh, but we all agreed not to do gifts, remember? She said it like I was the confused one, like I was the one who'd forgotten. Mom's eyes found mine across the room. That look. God, that look. The one that says, don't you dare embarrass this family. The one that says, shut up and smile. So I smiled. But here's what nobody in that room knew. Here's what they'd conveniently forgotten, or maybe never even registered in the first place. 3 weeks before this party, my phone had rung at 11 o'clock at night. Both my parents on the line, voices tight with panic. Property taxes. Missed payments. Confusion about whose name was actually still on the house deed. Mine. My name was on the deed. Could you just handle it temporarily? Dad had asked. Just until we sort things out. I paid the overdue taxes. Quietly. Quickly. No announcement. No thank you card. No acknowledgement at all. And now I sat there watching Madison glow in the center of the room like a spotlight followed her everywhere. Soaking up every ounce of praise like she always had, like she always would. Dad cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. Looking at me. Well, he said slowly, some people just show love differently. That's when something inside me shifted. For the first time in my entire life, I didn't feel small. I felt done. I stood up, grabbed my coat from the rack and said calmly, quietly, You're right, Dad. Some people do show love differently. Nobody tried to stop me as I walked toward the door. Nobody called my name. They didn't know yet that the house they were celebrating in, the house they felt so safe in, wasn't really theirs anymore. And they had no idea just how quiet their next Christmas was about to become. I didn't go home. Couldn't face my empty apartment yet. Couldn't face the silence that would force me to think about what I'd just done. So I drove. And drove. Radio off, just the hum of the engine and the sound of my own breathing. Almost an hour of highway, watching streetlights blur past, feeling something peeling away from me with every mile. The guilt. The automatic urge to apologize. That horrible reflex I developed over 30 years to turn around and say sorry even when I'd done absolutely nothing wrong. Around midnight, my phone started buzzing in the cup holder. Mom first. Then Dad. Then Madison. The screen kept lighting up, vibrating against the plastic. I didn't answer. Because they didn't know the whole truth. They didn't know what had really happened. And part of me savored that knowledge. Years ago, when my parents were drowning in debt, when Madison was finding herself, for the third time with another failed business venture they'd funded, they came to me with a proposal. Transfer the house into my name. Just on paper, they'd promised. Just temporary. It would help with refinancing, they said. Make things easier with the bank. I was younger then. Still desperate to be useful. Still believing that maybe if I helped enough, sacrificed enough, they'd finally see me. Really see me. I paid what needed to be paid. Signed what needed to be signed. Kept copies of everything like some part of me knew even then. And when those property tax letters started arriving at my address last month instead of theirs, when I realized they hadn't just forgotten to transfer things back, I finally understood. They hadn't forgotten anything. They just quietly, conveniently let the responsibility slide onto me. Like they always did. Like they'd been doing my whole life. Only this time I didn't let it slide. I called a lawyer. Her name was Rebecca. And she had this calm voice that didn't interrupt while I explained everything, didn't judge, didn't gasp. She just listened. At the end she asked one simple question. Do you want to keep the property, or do you want out? I chose out. By the time those Christmas lights were twinkling on their tree, by the time Madison was basking in her moment of glory, the paperwork was already filed. Notice of sale. Legal timelines. Everything clean, everything legitimate, everything completely legal. Have you ever reached a breaking point with your family? That moment when you finally said enough? Drop a comment, I read every single one. The morning of December 26th arrived gray and cold. At 7:12 a.m., my phone buzzed with a voicemail. Dad's voice, tight and controlled in that way that meant he was actually furious. Stop this nonsense. Your mother is very upset. We need to talk like a family. Like a family. Haha, that's rich. An hour later, Madison texted. I could practically hear her voice through the screen. That combination of accusation and victimhood she'd mastered. You embarrassed us. Mom cried all night. You always do this. If you reverse whatever you're doing, we can move forward. Move forward. Like nothing happened. Like it never happened. Like my feelings, my money, my name on legal documents, none of it mattered. I stared at that text for a long time. And then I set my phone down and made breakfast. By noon, someone was pounding on my apartment door. Not knocking. Pounding. I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. All three of them stood there when I opened the door. Mom and Dad in their winter coats, faces set in that expression I knew so well. Anger mixed with absolute certainty that they were right. Madison hovered behind them, arms crossed, looking like she'd barely slept. What is this? Mom demanded, waving her phone in my face. We got some kind of legal notice. This has to be a mistake. It's not, I said. My voice came out steady. That surprised me. Dad stepped forward, using his height the way he always did when he wanted to intimidate. You cannot sell that house. That's our home. It's my name on the deed, I replied. I paid the back taxes. I covered what you couldn't. Legally, it's mine. Madison actually scoffed. Actually laughed. You wouldn't do that to us. I looked at her then. Really looked. She had everything she'd ever wanted from them. The praise. The protection. The presents wrapped in expensive paper. And still she was absolutely furious that I had one thing she couldn't touch. I didn't do this to you, I said quietly. You did it to yourselves. Could they hear the breaking in my voice? Could they finally see what they'd created? Mom's whole demeanor shifted in an instant. Her voice went soft, strategic, like she was talking to a child who'd thrown a tantrum. Sweetheart, we didn't mean to hurt you. You know that. Christmas just got, well, misunderstood. I almost laughed. Almost. You said we all agreed not to do gifts, I replied. That wasn't a misunderstanding, Mom. That was a lie. The silence that followed was so thick I could feel it pressing against my skin. Dad's jaw clenched. I watched a vein pulse in his temple. So what, you're punishing us? Is that what this is? No, I said, and I meant it. I'm stepping out. They didn't leave right away. They stood there trying different tactics. Guilt. Anger. Promises that the family would never forgive me, that I'd regret this, that I was destroying everything. But I'd already destroyed nothing. They'd done that years ago, piece by piece, every time they chose Madison, Every time they looked through me like I was invisible, every time they took and never once said thank you. When they finally left, the door closing behind them felt like the end of something. Or maybe the beginning. 2 days later, the buyer's offer came through. Cash. Quick close. No contingencies. 3 days after that, my phone rang. Madison. Crying. They're blaming me, she sobbed. And for a second, just a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. They say I should have stopped you. They're talking about having to downsize, Emma. They're looking at apartments. I didn't comfort her. Didn't rush to fix it like I'd spent my whole life doing. I just listened. Let her cry. Let her feel what I've been feeling for 30 years. I have to go, I finally said. Emma, please. I hung up. For once, just this once, the consequences were landing exactly where they belonged. And you know what? It felt like breathing for the first time. When was the last time you chose yourself over people who claim to love you? Tell me in the comments. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept expecting to feel guilty, to feel that crushing weight of regret. But it never came. Instead, I felt light. So light I almost didn't recognize the feeling. Christmas had never felt empty before because I'd been too busy trying to fill everyone else's cups. But now? Now it felt honest. The next morning my phone was flooded. Texts. Missed calls. Even emails from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. All of them having suddenly discovered my contact information. This isn't over. Mom. You'll regret this. Dad. You're cruel. How could you be so cruel? Madison. I read each one. Felt each word try to burrow under my skin. And then I deleted them all. I didn't need to respond. I didn't need to explain myself again. I had spent 3 decades being invisible, being mocked, being told implicitly and explicitly that I didn't matter. And for the first time in my entire life, I realized something profound. I actually did matter. I mattered to myself. And that was enough. That had to be enough. By noon, my lawyer Rebecca called. Her voice was professional, but I could hear the hint of satisfaction in it. The sale is finalized, she said. The check has been wired to your account. Everything's done, Emma. Clean, fast, completely legal. I sat down on my couch, phone pressed to my ear, and just breathed. The house that had been a stage for humiliation, for endless favoritism, for making me feel like I was less than, was gone. And with it, the last thread tying me to their control snapped. Thank you, I whispered. You did the right thing, Rebecca said. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Later that afternoon, there was a knock on my door. Soft this time. Almost apologetic. Madison stood there alone, wearing her casual outfit that probably cost more than my rent, trying to smile like we were just 2 sisters catching up. Can we talk? She asked. We just wanted to, talk. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Never did. I didn't invite her in. Didn't step aside. Just stood in my doorway and looked at this person I'd grown up with. This stranger who shared my blood but never my struggles. I didn't do this to hurt you, I said clearly. I did it because I finally stopped hurting myself. Her face twisted. Shock, disbelief, anger, all of it cycling through her expression. But we're family, Emma. I laughed. Actually laughed, and the sound surprised both of us. Family doesn't celebrate while one of them suffers. Family doesn't lie about agreements and then make the honest person feel crazy. Family doesn't take and never once say thank you. That's not fair. What's not fair, I interrupted, is spending 30 years being invisible. What's not fair is paying your parents' debts while you get designer handbags and praise. What's not fair is being expected to smile while you shine. Madison's mouth opened and closed. She had no words. For once in her life, she had absolutely nothing to say. I need you to leave now, I said gently. And I need you not to come back. She left. No hug. No apology. Just left. And I closed the door on more than just her visit. I closed the door on 30 years of trying to earn love that should have been freely given. That evening, I sat by my apartment window watching the city lights flicker on one by one. Christmas decorations still hung on some balconies, lights twinkling in the growing darkness. And for the first time, I felt something I'd never felt during the holidays. Freedom. Not just financial freedom, though the money from the house sale meant I could breathe easier, could make choices without panic. But emotional freedom. The weight of their judgment, their constant comparisons, Their favoritism that had shaped my entire childhood and adult life. All of it lifted. I could feel the space it left behind. Empty space. Clean space. Space for something new. Freedom isn't free. Sometimes it costs us the people we thought we couldn't live without. Have you ever had to make that choice? Share below. The days between Christmas and New Year's passed quietly. No more angry calls. No more sobbing voicemails. Just silence. I learned later through a cousin who still texted me occasionally that Mom and Dad had found a smaller place. A condo. 2 bedrooms instead of 4. Madison had offered to let them stay with her, but apparently there'd been a fight about it. Something about responsibility and consequences and whose fault this really was. I felt nothing hearing that. Not satisfaction. Not guilt. Just nothing. The old Emma would have rushed to fix it, would have called and apologized and maybe even helped them move. Would have set herself on fire to keep them warm. But I wasn't her anymore. What was about to happen next would prove just how much I'd changed. The next Christmas came quietly. No obligations. No expectations. No dread building in my stomach for weeks beforehand. I bought a small tree from a corner lot, the kind that smells like pine and childhood memories that should have been good but weren't. Put up a few simple lights. Nothing fancy. Nothing performative. Then I called my friends. Real friends. The ones who'd listened to me cry about my family for years. The ones who'd told me I deserved better and meant it. We cooked together. Laughing in my tiny kitchen as someone burned the garlic bread, and someone else added way too much wine to the pasta sauce. We ate sitting on cushions on the floor because I didn't have a dining table big enough. We played games and told stories and nobody, not one single person, made me feel less than. Nobody judged me for what I'd done. Nobody demanded explanations. Nobody told me I should have handled it differently. They just loved me. Simply. Completely. The way family should have all along. Around midnight my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer but something made me. Emma. It was Mom. Her voice sounded small. Tired. I wanted to wish you Merry Christmas. I stepped out onto my balcony, leaving the warmth and laughter behind for a moment. Merry Christmas, Mom. Silence. Then, Are you doing okay? I'm doing really well, actually, I said honestly. Better than I've been in years. More silence. I could hear her breathing, could almost see her in my mind, trying to figure out what to say, how to bridge a gap she'd helped create. We miss you, she finally whispered. I know, I said. And I did know. They missed having someone to use. Someone to lean on without reciprocation. Someone who would always come back no matter how badly they were treated. They didn't miss me. They missed what I'd provided. I have to go, I said gently. I have friends over. Oh, okay. Maybe sometime we could. Maybe, I said, knowing it was a lie, knowing she probably knew too. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up and stood there in the cold air, watching my breath make clouds in the darkness. Inside, someone called my name, laughter in their voice, asking where I'd disappeared to. I realized then that freedom isn't something that's given to you. Something you claim. And sometimes, claiming it means letting go of the people who should have loved you most but never learned how. Tell me in the comments if you've ever had to make a choice like this. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone in this. So many of us have had to choose ourselves over family expectations, over guilt, over the desperate hope that they'll change. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life, because your story matters and your freedom matters. That Christmas, for the first time in 30 years, I was truly happy, truly seen, truly valued. Not because I'd finally earned my family's love, but because I'd finally learned to love myself enough to walk away from people who would never give me what I deserved. I went back inside where warmth and real love waited, where people celebrated me not for what I could do for them but for who I was. And as I settled back into the laughter and chaos of chosen family, I understood something profound. The best gift I'd ever given myself wasn't the money from that house sale. It was permission to be free. Ha ha ha, someone was doing an impression of how I described my sister's entrance at that last Christmas party, exaggerating the drama, and everyone was laughing and I was laughing too, really laughing, the kind that comes from your belly and shakes your whole body. This was what Christmas was supposed to feel like. This was what love was supposed to feel like. And I was never ever going back to anything less. Because I finally understood that I deserved to be celebrated, to be seen, to matter. And the only person who needed to believe that was me.